Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a time when winter wasn't about snow, angels, spiced cider, or curling up with Netflix. No, tonight we're trudging through the frozen mud of medieval Europe barefoot, probably because shoes are a luxury you gave up 2 harvests ago. You're a peasant now. You live in a drafty, smoke-filled hut, sleep beside your goats, and spend the coldest months of the year clinging to life with nothing but lukewarm porridge and a whole lot of prayer. Outside, the wind doesn't whistle, it screams. It worms through every chink in your thatched roof, sweeps through the cracks in your wooden walls, and sinks its teeth into your bones. The trees are bare, the fields are dead, and the sun barely peeks above the horizon. It's not even dinner time, and it's already dark. You're hungry, not snacky, not I could eat. You're starving daily, chronically, hopelessly. And this is just the start of winter. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake by the end, drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's late November now, and the first frost has already crusted the fields. The last few root vegetables have been dug up: turnips, maybe some knobby carrots if you were lucky, and whatever grain stores you managed to preserve are now locked away in wooden bins or clay jars, watched over like treasure. There's no grocery store, no supply chain. If you didn't grow it, smoke it, salt it, or dry it yourself, it simply doesn't exist. Your name doesn't matter. No one will write it down. You're part of a village, perhaps 40 or 50 people at most, tucked against the edge of a forest in northern Europe. England, France, the Holy Roman Empire. It hardly matters. The suffering is the same everywhere. The village is little more than a scatter of huts, each made from wattle and daub twigs woven together, smeared with mud, straw, and dung. The roofs are thatched, but always leaking. Windows are rare, and if you're lucky enough to have one, it's a hole covered with greased animal hide to let in the light, but not the cold. Inside your hut, your family huddles close. You, your spouse, your children, if they've made it this far. Infant mortality is a cruel and casual part of life. The baby that coughed all through October. She stopped crying 2 days ago. You buried her near the edge of the woods, said a prayer, and got back to chopping firewood. Winter doesn't pause for grief. The hearth is the center of your world. A small stone or clay structure blackened by smoke. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof, and even that barely works. Smoke coils around the low ceiling, makes your eyes water, clings to your hair and clothes. You've grown used to the sting in your throat. Everyone coughs in winter. It's just part of being alive. You start your day before sunrise because you have to. The fire must be kept alive. If it goes out, relighting it from scratch is a misery, especially without flint. You stir the embers, add twigs, and then logs if you've got them. You ration firewood just like food. There is no breakfast, not really. Just the same thin porridge you'll eat for dinner. Barley or oat gruel boiled with water, maybe thickened with bits of cabbage or dried peas. Salt is rare, flavor is non-existent, but it's warm. You eat slowly, savoring each bite like it's the last. It might be. You wear the same woolen tunic every day. It's itchy, stained, and too thin. Beneath it, a linen undershirt that hasn't been washed in weeks. Washing means water, and water means breaking the ice on the rain barrel or walking to the stream. That water is precious. You don't waste it on laundry. Over the tunic, a second tunic if you're fortunate. A hooded cloak, patched and frayed, offers some relief from the cold. Your shoes, arms if you have them, are made of rough leather stuffed with straw for warmth, but they're cracked and damp. Woolen socks. Maybe, but they're full of holes. You've learned not to care. The tasks of the day don't change with the seasons. Animals still need feeding. You check the goats who share your hut at night for warmth. They bleat softly, their breath puffing white clouds in the dim morning air. You milk them with numb fingers, careful not to spill a drop. That milk is everything. Chickens scratch near the doorway. They lay fewer eggs in winter, but maybe you'll get one. A precious egg, a luxury most only dream of in the hungry months. The pigs root through frozen compost. They'll be slaughtered soon if they haven't already been. Meat is stored by salting, smoking, or drying above the hearth. Then it's time to gather fuel. You head into the woods with an axe or just your hands. Fallen branches, pine cones, dried leaves, anything that will burn. You work quickly. The cold stiffens your joints and the forest holds dangers. Wolves, bandits, spirits perhaps. You've heard the tales. You whisper a prayer before stepping off the path. Back in the village, you trade a handful of firewood for a scrap of bread. It's blackened, dense, full of chaff and grit. You chew carefully. Teeth are precious. Once they're gone, they're gone. As night approaches, the cold deepens. You bar the door with a wooden plank and check the straw bedding. It's damp and smells of mold. You lie beside your children, curl up against your spouse, and wrap yourself in a coarse woolen blanket. The goats bleat softly, the fire hisses, and the wind howls like a wounded animal outside. Someone sneezes. You flinch. A cough could mean death. You've heard of villages wiped out by a single illness. They say if you wake up in the morning still warm, still breathing, it's a blessing. You close your eyes and pray. Not for riches, not for comfort, just to make it through one more night. The wind rattles the roof and the smoke burns your throat. But you've done what you could. You gathered, you rationed, you survived for now. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. Morning comes slowly in winter, and when it does, it arrives with a gray, watery light that barely penetrates the thick clouds overhead. There's no rooster crowing dramatically. He's quiet today, feathers fluffed against the cold, too hungry and cold to announce anything. But you're already awake anyway. You never really slept, not with the wind groaning through the roof, and your youngest child tossing beside you, feverish and pale. You ease yourself up from the straw bed, careful not to jostle the others. Your muscles ache from the cold, your back stiff from sleeping on the hard-packed dirt. The blanket you shared is damp with breath and condensation. You pull your tunic tighter and shuffle to the hearth, stirring the ashes. Thank God the embers are still alive. You feed them twigs, then kindling, and coax a small flame into being. It's weak, but it's light and warmth. You crouch beside it, holding out your hands, and breathe. There's a small chunk of yesterday's porridge left in the pot, hardened at the edges. You add water to loosen it, stirring slowly. It will serve as breakfast for the family. It's not enough, not even close, but it's something warm to start the day. The baby groans softly in her sleep. You hope it's a good sign. Your spouse joins you, eyes tired and sunken. You speak in whispers to avoid waking the children. There's talk of visiting the reeve, the village's overseer, today. He holds the keys to the grain barn, and rumor has it there may be a handful of barley available for those in need. You are always in need. But begging has its price. Perhaps a day's labor, or two. Perhaps something else. The porridge is ready. You divide it carefully, an uneven scoop for each child, the thinnest portion for yourself. You're used to being hungry. Your children aren't. You watch them eat silently, praying it's enough to keep them from getting sick. Once the bowls are licked clean, it's time to go outside. The cold hits you like a slap when you open the door. The air is razor sharp, the ground crunchy with frost. Your breath clouds before your face. You wrap your cloak tighter and head toward the commons, stepping carefully on the frozen ruts and muddy patches. Other villagers are out too, moving like shadows across the brittle morning landscape. They nod in passing, tired, wary eyes under wool hoods. There is no joy, no laughter, no idle chatter. In winter, words are saved. Energy is saved. Life is saved if you're lucky. At the Reeves' cottage, a small group has already gathered. The Reeve himself stands tall and broad, better fed than anyone else here. He's wrapped in fine wool boots, polished cheeks ruddy. He lives well because he ensures the Lord's taxes are collected and the village stays obedient. And in return, he eats meat all winter and sleeps in a bed raised off the floor. He eyes you all like livestock. No smiles, no pity. He announces that 2 sacks of barley are available today. A dozen families step forward. He smirks. There will be work in exchange, clearing snow from the road, mending fences for the manor, hauling water for the Reeves' own kitchen. You sign your name with your hands. A small nod, a murmured, "I'll do it." There's no time to think. Hunger decides faster than pride. The barley is measured out, 1 scoop into your sack. You glance down. It's hardly enough to fill your palm, but you bow your head in gratitude. You'll grind it tonight with a stone, mix it into your gruel, thicken it slightly. It will stretch your rations for another day. As you walk home, a flurry begins. Tiny snowflakes drift lazily through the air, landing on your cloak, your lashes, your cheeks. It's beautiful almost if you weren't so cold. You remember a story from the village priest told weeks ago when Advent began about how snow is like grace falling gently, even on the wicked. You wonder if he believes that or if it's something he says to keep people calm. You pass the chapel on the way back, a squat wooden building with a stone cross atop the roof. Its doors are closed, but the bell above is wrapped in cloth to keep it from cracking in the frost. Still inside, there is sanctuary, spiritually at least. You slip in through the creaking door. The chapel is dim lit by 1 guttering candle. There's no priest at this hour, only the cold and silence. You kneel near the altar and mumble a prayer. Not for salvation, not for glory, just for a little more strength. Just to keep your children warm. Just to last the season. Back outside, the flurry has thickened. By the time you return to your hut, the thatch is dusted with white. The door is stiff in its frame, and you push it open with your shoulder. Inside, the hearth fire has dwindled again. You add a handful of twigs and coax the flames back to life. The children are still wrapped in their blanket noses, pink breath shallow. You tell them a story, something old about a knight who found a treasure in the snow. They listen with glassy eyes, but they smile at the part where the knight gives the treasure to a starving child. You leave out the ending, though. You don't want to talk about how the knight died saving her. Afternoon fades quickly. You go outside again to fetch water from the stream. The walk is long and treacherous. but there's no choice. The rain barrel is frozen solid. You carry 2 clay jugs tied to a yoke across your shoulders. Each step is careful. You cannot afford a fall. A broken ankle is a death sentence here. At the stream, you break the ice with a stick. The water is painfully cold. You fill the jugs and begin the long walk back, the weight pressing into your bones. You think about warm places, fires that roar instead of sputter, beds with mattresses instead of straw. Maybe you tell yourself heaven is just a room that's never cold. As evening descends, the village glows faintly with firelight. You return to your hut, set the water down, and begin making supper. The children help mashing dried peas, grinding a handful of barley. There's no meat tonight, but the stew smells hearty enough to fool your stomach. You eat quietly, letting the warmth fill you, however briefly. The baby wakes up, fussing weakly. Her fever's broken. You sigh in relief. You cradle her, whispering the same lullaby your mother sang to you in winters past. Night wraps itself around the hut again. The wind scratches at the walls. But tonight, there is porridge in your belly fire on the hearth, and your children are still breathing. And that is what passes for comfort in a medieval winter. Outside, the snow has thickened. What started as a gentle flurry now blankets the village in silence. The sounds of the world wood being chopped, animals shuffling boots on frozen earth, have all been muffled. Snow in this century is not romantic. It is a veil that smothers movement, complicates everything, and reminds you that nature always has the final say. You wake in darkness again, though whether it's morning or just a brief moment of wakefulness in a night filled with tossing and coughing, it's hard to tell. The baby's breathing is steady now, a small miracle. You pull the wool blanket up tighter around her little body. Your spouse is still asleep, one hand resting on your arm. You can feel the cold even in that touch. The fire has died down again. You rise slowly, muscles aching, and tiptoe across the floor to stir the coals. You whisper a prayer as you do. Not to be holy, just to feel less alone. This is the rhythm of survival. Not living, but enduring. There's no schedule, no clock ticking down to relief. Just the weight of the hours. You sit by the rekindled flames and wrap your arms around your knees, waiting for the thin light of dawn. When it comes, it does so reluctantly. Through the fogged hide covering the window hole, a faint grayness seeps in. Another day, another chance, another burden. You step outside and instantly regret it. The cold isn't just biting, it feels personal now. The snow is ankle-deep, clinging to your boots, and the wind has carved it into hard ridges. You tread carefully, heading toward the barn. The animals must be checked, fed, and milked. The chickens huddle in corners, feathers puffed. The goat eyes you, bleats once, and stamps a hoof. You place your hand on her flank, warm and rough with fur, and whisper gently as you milk her. The rhythm of it soothes you, pull, release, and the tin mug slowly fills. It's barely enough for the baby and the youngest child. You sip what's left yourself, cold and thin, but still precious. You toss the chickens some old scraps, pea husks, and beet tops from 2 days ago. They peck half-heartedly. Their appetite has dulled just like yours. Then the pigs. You don't really have enough to feed them anymore, and you know it's only a matter of time before they'll be slaughtered. But for now, you give them the potato skins, and they grunt gratefully. You pat one on the head and turn back toward your hut, trying not to think about the knife. There's word around the village of an upcoming feast, if you can believe that. Not a grand one, of course, and certainly not what the word feast conjures in warmer, wealthier lands. But it's the feast of St. Thomas, and the local priest says he wants to remind the village of hope. Hope to you looks like a bowl of pottage with a shred of salted meat in it. You gather with the others near the chapel later that day. The snow still falls thinner now, more graceful than threatening. The priest speaks to you all wrapped in robes that look only slightly cleaner than yours. His words are soft, full of parables, full of light. He speaks of the Holy Family, of how they too had no proper home, how they wandered in the cold, how the infant Jesus was born among beasts. You nod. That part at least makes sense. You know what it is to sleep beside goats and pray for warmth. After the service, there's a little food passed around. Some barley cakes made from coarse ground meal and baked on a hot stone. No sweeteners, no honey, just grain and labor. A small handful of dried apples. Someone brings a scrap of salt pork, which is passed around like relics. You break off a sliver, savoring the fat as it melts on your tongue. It's enough to make you feel, just for a moment, like you've stepped outside the cycle of want. The children laugh, chasing each other through the snow. Their feet are wrapped in scraps of cloth, and their cheeks are red from the cold, but they're laughing. You smile. It's not something you see often in winter. You store that sound in your memory to bring it back later when the nights stretch too long. But then the reeve appears again and the laughter quiets. He brings news from the manor house. The Lord's stores are running low, not because he's in danger of hunger, but because the roads are closed with snow and the shipments from the south are delayed. This matters because when the Lord's table grows light, his servants turn to the village. The reeve makes it clear the Lord expects a delivery. A tithe as usual, but heavier this time. More grain, more firewood, more hands to mend the roads once the thaw begins. You clench your jaw, say nothing. You know what this means. You'll have to give up more of what little you've saved. Maybe even trade one of your animals. You consider the goat and feel your stomach twist. Back at the hut, you share the news quietly. Your spouse is silent for a long time. Then a nod. You both know there's no choice. This is not your land. Nothing here belongs to you. Not the fields, not the hut, not even your own body when the Lord calls on it. That night you prepare the barley you were saving. You mix it with dried beans and the last of the leeks. It smells rich compared to usual. The children eat with soft sighs of pleasure, licking their bowls clean. You let them believe it's just because of the feast. You don't say that it's likely the best meal they'll get this month. Afterward, you tuck them into bed one by one. The baby is alert now, staring up at you with wide eyes. You hum again something old and wordless, and she blinks, slowly drifting off. Outside, the snow begins again. Inside, the fire glows low. You sit beside it, eyes half shut, hands wrapped around a cup of warm water. There's no tea, no herbs, nothing but the heat. Still, it's enough to trick your body into comfort. You watch the flames dance and you try to remember what summer felt like. You picture the green fields, the buzzing insects, the way sweat once ran down your back as you threshed grain under a beating sun. It feels like another life. But you know, if you can just hold on through snow and hunger and sickness, if you can just endure one more day, one more week, one more moon's turning, eventually the thaw will come. Eventually the ice will break. Eventually, life will begin again. The sun is barely up, though up is a generous term. It's a dull circle behind gray clouds, casting no warmth, no shadows, just the confirmation that another day has begun. You open your eyes to the same cold ceiling, the same earthy smell of damp straw smoke and goat musk. You listen for a moment, breathing from your children, the rustle of blankets, the whistle of wind sneaking in under the eaves. You rise slowly, careful not to let the blanket slip too far from your shoulders. The cold stabs at your skin with a cruelty that feels personal. Your feet touch the hard-packed dirt, and it's like stepping on stone. You move to the hearth and coax the fire from last night's coals, nudging the embers like a mother waking her child. You whisper to it. It hisses in return. There's barely anything left to burn today. Just a few sticks gathered from the edge of the woods yesterday, and a handful of straw too moldy for the animals. You feed it to the flames one piece at a time, watching them rise with greedy fingers until you have just enough heat to boil a pot of water. Today's breakfast is thinner than usual. Just hot water with a spoonful of mashed oats, barely enough to cloud the surface. You ladle it into wooden bowls, apologizing with your eyes as you pass it to your children. They don't complain. They're used to disappointment. After they eat, you wrap them in wool and cloth and send them out to the chapel. The priest offers lessons there, scripture, some Latin words and stories that stretch their imaginations further than the boundaries of the village ever will. But more importantly, it's warmer inside those stone walls. It's a small mercy. You stay behind to clean, if you can call it that. You sweep the dirt floor with a bundle of twigs, gathering the ash and debris from the hearth. You shake out the blankets, hang them near the smoke to dry, even if the smell never truly fades. Then it's time to go find more firewood. Again. You trudge to the edge of the woods, the snow crunching underfoot. The weight of the basket on your back isn't the worst part. It's the uncertainty. Will there be anything left? Will you return empty-handed? The forest has been stripped nearly bare by now. Everyone in the village is out here somewhere scouring the underbrush, looking for fallen limbs, dry bark, anything not already soaked through or rotting. You find a few sticks, a branch that can be broken down, and some pine cones that might smolder. It's not much, but it's something. You hear a cry not far off. Someone has slipped on ice, perhaps. You don't investigate. You can't afford to. Helping means delay, and delay means cold. On the way back, you stop at the stream. You crack through the ice with a rock, dip your clay jug into the black water, and hoist it to your hip. It sloshes cold against your side, numbing you further. When you look up, you see the clouds thickening. More snow is coming. Maybe tonight. Maybe now. You quicken your steps. At home, your spouse is back from helping another family butcher their pig. For that, you were given a strip of pork fat, just the fat. No meat, no bone. But it glistens in the dim light, and it smells of richness. It will make tonight's meal feel extravagant. You render it slowly over the fire, letting it melt into the pot. Then you add the water, the oats, a pinch of herbs you'd hidden in a pouch since summer. Just a few dried leaves of savory and thyme. Their scent rises with the steam, and for a moment your home doesn't smell like winter anymore. It smells like memory. When the children return, they bring word that the priest shared a story of Saint Bridget today, a woman who fed the poor, who multiplied food when none was left. The children's eyes are wide with wonder, and you nod solemnly. You wonder what she would have done with a pot of boiled oats and pork grease. You eat together in quiet gratitude. You chew slowly. No one gulps or wastes. Even the littlest child understands the rules. Now nothing is thrown away. Not a drop. That night, the cold is deeper. The kind that tightens your chest when you breathe. Your spouse wraps cloth around the doorframe to block the draft. You huddle close again, all of you shoulder to shoulder, layered in wool and hope. The fire burns low, but it burns. You lie there in the dark, listening to the sounds of sleep. A cough, a shifting foot, the whisper of wind. You start to count the nights until Candlemas. That's the next marker, the next milestone to aim for. The halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring, 40 nights from now. You don't think about all the things that could happen between now and then. Illness, injury, a bad frost, a raid maybe, though it's been years since bandits came through. But still, you've learned not to assume safety. Instead, you think about the smell of that stew tonight, the way the herbs made it feel like summer. You remember the little story your daughter told about St. Bridget, about a cloak that grew wide enough to cover a whole village. You wonder what it would be like to live under a cloak like that, warm, dry, protected. And as you drift off, shivering, but not alone, you let yourself believe, if only for a little while, that you do. The morning brings wind, not a gentle breeze, not the playful rustling of leaves. This is a moaning, shrieking, vengeful wind that barrels down from the hills and snakes through the trees with claws made of ice. It rattles, shudders, slams into walls, and whistles through every gap in your roof like a ghost looking for a place to rest. You wake up to the sound of it and the chill it's dragged inside with it. No one speaks at first. You all just lie there unmoving, pretending for a few seconds longer that the day hasn't begun. But it has. The fire is down to ash and ember. The baby stirs first, then coughs. You feel your spouse shift beside you and know what must happen next. Someone has to get up. Someone has to greet the wind. It's your turn. You throw off the blanket and shiver violently as the air hits your skin. Your breath clouds immediately. You shuffle across the room, bones aching, and bend low to the hearth. You gather the last of the pine cones and straw from yesterday, say a silent prayer, and set them gently among the embers. You blow softly, hoping they'll catch. They do, barely. A thin flame wriggles upward, licking at the twigs. You shelter it with your hands like it's a newborn. It hisses, then grows. You add the smallest log. The heat rises slowly, but it does rise. You feel it on your hands, your face. It's not warmth exactly, but it's not nothing. The children wake next, rubbing sleep from their eyes with red knuckles. You give them each a cup of warm water, not tea, not milk, just warm. It helps shake off the worst of the chill. Then comes the meal. Today's porridge is made from the dregs of last week's grain jar. It's thin, soupy, and barely clings to the spoon. But you ladle it out anyway, careful to scrape every bit from the pot. Today is for mending. The snow has pinned everyone indoors, and the roads are impassable. That means no visits to the manor, no work for the reeve, no collecting firewood. Just you inside your hut, sewing patches onto sleeves, retying broken sandals with twine, fixing the harness that holds your water jug. You take a strip of leather worn cracking and stitch it to the sole of your spouse's boot. Your fingers are numb, clumsy, but you work by memory now. You've done this 1,000 times. The needle is carved bone. The thread is sheep sinew dried and twisted. It snaps once and you curse under your breath. Outside, the wind howls again. You glance toward the door and see the cloth barrier puff inward with each gust. The hut creaks. Snow is beginning to pile against the walls. Midday comes and goes with little notice. There is no sun to mark the hour, just a slight lightening in the sky. The children sit near the fire playing with stones and bits of twine. One of them is humming a tune passed down from your grandmother, something about spring coming early if the snowdrop blooms. You want to believe in that. You boil a handful of beans, what's left of them, and mash them into a paste with some garlic and dried nettles. It smells pungent, but earthy. The children wrinkle their noses, but they eat. Hunger doesn't have preferences anymore. It just wants to be filled. Later, as the light fades again, your oldest child starts to cough. Not a delicate cough, a deep hacking one. It pulls at their whole body, leaves them panting. You freeze for a second, then move quickly, lifting their blanket higher, checking their forehead. It's warm, too warm. You know this cough. You've heard it before. In a neighbor's hut last winter. In your brother's hut the winter before that. It starts like this always, a little tickle in the throat, then the fever, then the sweat, then silence. You boil water, add a pinch of dried yarrow and willow bark from your hidden stash. Herbs traded long ago for 2 eggs and a lump of wax. You hold the cup to your child's lips. They sip, shivering. You whisper stories as you do about kings in far-off lands, about ships that sail over ice, about a dragon who guards the sun until spring returns. You pretend it's all normal, that everything will be fine. You lie down beside them that night, hold them close, count the seconds between coughs. Every time they breathe in, you listen carefully to make sure there's another breath after. And still the wind blows. In the middle of the night, you hear something cracking, snapping. You sit up, the roof, the door, no, the barn. You grab your cloak and step outside, the cold slicing at your cheeks. The snow is nearly knee-deep now. You trudge to the barn, lantern in hand. The roof is sagging under the weight. One corner has partially collapsed. Inside, the goats are bleating wildly. One of them is caught beneath a beam. You drop the lantern and rush in, shoving the snow aside. You grab the broken beam, straining with all your strength. Your hands are bare. The cold bites, the wood scrapes your palms, but you lift. Your spouse arrives, joins you, and together you drag the goat free. It's limping, but alive. You both sit there in the straw afterward, panting, your breath mingling in the air. For a moment, nothing moves but the steam rising from your bodies. Eventually, you return inside. The child is still breathing, still coughing, but alive. The hut is cold again. The fire needs feeding. You take the rest of the wood and pile it on. No point saving it. This night demands everything. You sit by the fire exhausted and stare into the orange glow. You made it through another day. You saved the goat. The child is still breathing. In this life that's victory. Dawn breaks sluggishly, the sky outside your hut stuck in a permanent haze of dull gray. The world had no sharp edges now, just layers of snow stacked one atop another, muffling the sound of life until everything feels distant, like a memory you're struggling to hold on to. The wind from the night before has finally calmed, but the stillness it leaves behind feels eerie, like something is watching, waiting. You pull yourself up from the floor slowly, careful not to disturb your sick child. Their fever broke sometime after midnight, but the cough is still there, rattling deep in their chest like a stone tumbling inside a wooden box. You check their forehead. It's damp now, not burning. That's good. You pray it stays that way. There's no more wood by the hearth. You knew this was coming, of course, but the empty space where the bundle used to sit feels like a wound. You bundle up again, layer by layer. Woolen tunic, patched cloak, the same threadbare scarf you've used for 5 winters now, and step out into the snow. The cold hits differently today. Not with violence, but with weight. Every step feels like it's through wet cement. You trudge slowly, head down, breath short. The forest is farther now than it used to be, or maybe you're just weaker than yesterday. Most of the low branches are gone. What remains are thin, frost-covered twigs barely worth burning. But you gather what you can. A fallen limb here, some bark there. You dig through the snow for a half-buried stump, breaking your nails on the frozen dirt. It takes a long time. Your hands go numb. But when your basket is halfway full, you begin to feel a tiny flicker of hope. It's not much, but maybe enough for 2 fires. 3 if you stretch it. On the way back, you see the smith's wife struggling through the drifts, hauling a bucket of slush. Her lips are blue. She nods at you without words. Her husband died last winter fever, same as the one your child now fights. She's been alone since. You consider offering help, but what would you even carry? Her grief is heavier than the snow. Back at the hut, your children have gathered close to the hearth again, trying to coax heat from its memory. You feed the fire like it's a starving animal, small pieces first, then larger ones. It catches quickly, and the room warms slightly enough for the children to unwrap their feet and hold them to the glow. Your sick child is awake now, eyes bright but sunken. You bring them water and place your palm against their cheek. Still warm, but not too warm. They smile faintly, and you feel something uncoil in your chest. Relief, tiny, fragile, but real. Lunch today is a broth, if you can call it that. Hot water, a shred of barley, a bit of carrot you'd forgotten at the bottom of a jar, already soft and bending. You boil it down with some crushed garlic stir in a handful of split peas. It's enough to fill 5 wooden bowls barely. But there's warmth in the steam, and the children don't complain. They never complain anymore. You look around the room as they eat. The walls are soot-blackened, and the straw bedding is thinning. The air is thick with smoke and sweat and sickness. But it's home. It's safety, at least for now. You wonder what your own childhood hut looked like. If your parents had moments like this, hunched over a fire watching you cough, counting wood pieces like gold coins. Later, as the children nap, you slip outside again. You walk toward the chapel, partly for prayer, partly for news. The snow crunches underfoot, and your breath clouds the air like a trail of incense. The chapel is small but sturdy. Its stone walls hold in the heat better than your hut ever could. Inside, the priest is kneeling near the altar, lips moving silently. You wait at the back until he rises. When he sees you, he nods and comes over. You ask about medicine, about herbs, about anything. He sighs, says he gave the last of the dried elderflower to the Reeves' daughter, who took ill a week ago. He says he'll pray for your child. He places a hand on your shoulder. It's meant to be comfort. It only makes the fear feel more real. You light a candle anyway. It's a habit more than a hope. One stub of wax in a wall of others, flickering faintly in the gloom. You whisper your child's name and leave before your knees go weak. Outside, the snow has paused. For the first time in days, the clouds part briefly, revealing a stretch of blue sky. It's small, like a crack in the heavens, but it stops you in your tracks. The sunlight is thin, but it's there. It touches the snow with a shimmer, turns the chapel roof to silver. You stand there in the silence, your breath curling like prayer, and you let yourself believe it means something. That night, your child coughs less. The fire burns steady. The broth stretches farther than you expected. You sit by the hearth, sharpening your knife with a whetstone, though there's little meat to cut these days. It's just something to do with your hands. Your spouse hums an old tune, barely audible, something about March winds and spring rain. The children drift off, one by one, curled like pups beneath the blankets. Your sick child falls asleep last, clutching a doll made of cloth, scraps, and straw. You watch their chest rise and fall, slow and even. Tomorrow will come whether you're ready or not. But for tonight, you made it. That has to be enough. The snow is melting. Not fast, never fast, but enough that you notice. Little streams of slush trickle from the roof. The eaves drip steadily, and the packed snow outside your doorway has thinned to a layer of ice with patches of brown earth peeking through. It's a cruel kind of hope, this thaw. It doesn't mean warmth, not yet. It just means the cold is no longer a silence. It's starting to shift, groan, move. Inside your hut, the fire still burns. The pile of firewood has dwindled to almost nothing, but for the first time in weeks, you believe there might be an end to it all. Your child's cough has softened. They sleep longer now without fever. You've even heard them laugh, a dry, tired giggle at something their younger brother said. That laugh stuck with you all day like the sound of spring remembered. You step outside to survey the damage. The barn still leans where it buckled under the snow. The fences are half buried, but the outline of the path is back, a snake of brown and black mud winding between cottages. You follow it out toward the fields, past neighbors digging themselves out in silence, nodding greetings with hollow eyes. The fields are gray and lifeless. The soil is still frozen, too hard to till, but not forever. Soon the plow will come out. Soon you'll walk behind it, shoulders aching, hands blistered. Soon there will be seeds, but not today. You head to the stream again. This time the ice has broken in wide, jagged cracks. The water rushes beneath it, black and fast. You kneel and fill your jug, your reflection warping on the surface. You barely recognize your own face, gaunt eyes, sunken lips cracked, but alive. That counts for something. Back at the hut, the baby is teething. You forgot what that looked like. They drool and gnaw on everything, wailing into the cloth of your tunic. It's a terrible sound, but also a normal one. A sound from the world of the living. You bounce them on your knee, humming an old rhyme about starlings in the chimney and lambs in the meadow. You can't remember all the words, but it doesn't matter. The rhythm is enough. That afternoon, a knock comes at your door. It startles everyone. No one knocks in winter. People call out or wait. Knocking is hopeful. You open it cautiously, half expecting bad news. It's the Reeve. He stands with two of his sons behind him, cloaks soaked from the thaw. He speaks gruffly, gets to the point the manor needs hands. The Lord's steward wants the road to the village cleared by next week, before his spring hunting party arrives. In return, each worker will receive a loaf of rye bread and a strip of dried venison. You don't hesitate. You say yes. You need the bread. You need the meat. More than that, you need the chance to move again. To work outdoors, to sweat in the cold air, and feel your limbs thaw from inside. You promise to meet at first light. The reeve nods and turns away, already shouting orders at the neighbor's hut. You tell your spouse and they nod too. It's understood. The sick child is stronger now. The fire can be kept alive with smaller pieces. There's just enough wood left. Your oldest can watch the younger ones. That night you go to sleep early, your cloak beside you, boots drying near the fire. You think about bread. Real bread. Not mash. Not gruel. But a dark, solid crust that cracks when you bite into it. You imagine holding it in your hands and feeling its weight. You imagine sharing it. At dawn, you rise before the others. You pull on your boots, still damp, and wrap your cloak tightly. You kiss your children's heads, one by one. The baby snores softly. The sick child sleeps deeply for once. You step out into the cold light, the sky bruised with early color. Others are already gathering at the village edge. Half a dozen men and women bundled in layers, eyes heavy but determined. No one speaks much. You all carry shovels, picks, anything that might break ice and clear the path. The road to the manor curves through woods and drifts and needs to be made passable before the steward comes riding in with his dogs and fine boots. The work is grueling. You dig, scrape, haul snow and ice to the side, cut branches that fell under the winter's weight. You slip more than once, knees aching, palms blistered. But you keep going, all of you do, because this is what work means here. Not ambition, not pride, just survival, just bread. By midday, your muscles are screaming. You can't feel your fingertips. But the road begins to appear beneath the melting ice stone and dirt, uneven and old but visible. You sit briefly back against a tree and eat a scrap of oat cake you brought from home. It's dry and crumbles in your mouth, but it fuels you. At the end of the day, the steward appears on horseback. He surveys your work without a word of praise. His servant tosses a bundle of food at your feet, a wrapped cloth with the promised rye and meat. You catch it quickly before it hits the mud. You carry it home as if it were treasure, which of course it is. Inside, your children cheer when they see it. You tear the bread in half, then again and again distributing it evenly. The meat you slice thin, savoring the smell. You chew slowly, letting the salt and fat warm your tongue. Your sick child eats 2 bites, then sleeps again. The baby gnaws on a bread crust, giggling. You sit back and feel something you haven't felt in weeks. Not full, not warm, not safe, but something like satisfaction. You worked. You were fed. Your children were fed. Tonight, that is enough. Morning comes with less dread than usual. The air in the hut is still cold, yes, and the straw under your blanket is still damp, but something in your bones has shifted. You slept. The fire held. The baby didn't cry. The sick child slept without coughing once. That alone is worth a dozen prayers. Your body aches from yesterday's labor on the road. But it's the good kind of ache, the kind that comes from purpose, not panic. You move slowly at first, stretching your limbs, rotating your shoulders. Every joint complains. You ignore them. The fire is down to a whisper, but it catches again with a little coaxing. You saved 2 small logs yesterday. You feed them to the flames, watching the orange flicker dance up and wrap itself around the wood like a promise. You warm your hands, then your face, then your heart. Your spouse stirs and joins you in silence. You both sip warm water laced with a few dried mint leaves, long hoarded in a cloth pouch for just such a morning. It's barely tea, but the smell is enough to make your hut feel like a place of comfort instead of survival. You don't speak, but your glances carry meaning. We're still here. We made it another day. Breakfast today is better than usual. You saved a small piece of the rye loaf from yesterday. It's hard now, but still flavorful. You break it into the gruel, let it soak and soften. It thickens the whole pot, gives it substance. The children notice immediately. The youngest squeals in delight. You all eat quietly, chewing with care, savoring every bite like a feast. Then comes the sound you didn't expect, birdsong. A small trill from just outside the hut. You freeze spoon halfway to your mouth. It's not a dream. You set the bowl down and rise, moving to the door. When you push it open, the cold greets you, but not the biting, cruel cold of January. This is lighter, milder. The snow has pulled back even more. The path to the woods is clearer, the stream runs freely, and in a tree above your roof a bird chirps again. You smile without meaning to. Spring is not here. Not really. But it's coming. Later that morning, you hear from a neighbor that the Lord Steward is taking volunteers to repair the grain mill on the edge of the estate. It's old, made of stone and wood, and parts of it have collapsed under the weight of snow and months of neglect. In exchange for work, each villager will receive a small sack of flour, wheat flour, not oat, and a lump of pig's lard. You volunteer again. You take your oldest child with you this time. They're strong enough now, their fever gone, their cough quieted. You wrap them in an extra tunic, give them your gloves, and walk together down the muddy path to the mill. Their fingers slip into yours, halfway there. You grip tightly. The mill is worse than expected. The water wheel is broken, slumped sideways in the stream. One of the walls has collapsed, stones scattered like dice in the mud. But the steward is already barking orders, organizing the workers. You and your child join the others, villagers, mostly men, a few women, older children, all moving in quiet rhythm. You clear the rubble, stack stones, chop wood, rebuild. The work is back-breaking. Your hand blister again. Your child's face turns pale from the effort, but they don't stop. You see yourself in them, your younger self before marriage, before childbirth, before a dozen winters stole your softness. You feel something like pride. At midday, there's a break. A servant hands out a clay jug of watered wine, and you all pass it around. You haven't tasted wine in months. It burns your throat, but you drink every drop. Your child coughs after their first sip, then grins through watery eyes. By evening, the mill stands upright again. Not fully fixed, but better. Usable. The steward hands out the promised rewards. When you hold the sack of flour in your hands, it feels like gold. It's fine, pale, dusted with the faint scent of sunlight. The lard is wrapped in cloth, slick and heavy. You walk home together, your child dragging a stick in the mud behind them humming an old song. You don't say anything. You just listen. That night your spouse takes the flour and kneads it into dough with what's left of your water. They add a pinch of salt you saved from the feast of St. Thomas and a spoon of lard. You cook it over the hearth on a flat stone, flipping it once, twice until it blisters. The hut smells like home. You tear the bread into pieces and pass it around. The children eat silently, chewing with closed eyes. You do too. The crust cracks beneath your teeth. The inside is soft, warm. You save a piece for tomorrow. Always save a piece. After the meal, you all sit near the fire bellies, not full but quiet. The baby babbles. Your oldest child rests their head on your shoulder. Outside, the snow is almost gone. You think of the road ahead, plowing, planting, mending, and another year of work, of hunger, of storms. You know it won't be easy, but tonight there is warmth, there is bread, there is birdsong in the trees. And for the first time in a long time, there is something you almost dare to call hope. You wake to light, not the watery, reluctant gray of deep winter, but true amber-tinged daylight slipping through the hide-covered window. It strikes the packed earth floor in a sharp beam. For a moment, you simply lie there and let it wash over you. The warmth is faint but real. The kind of warmth you'd almost forgotten the sun could give. Your first instinct is suspicion. Sunlight this strong means the snow has retreated even further. It might also mean mud. Flooding. The churned earth of spring has its own dangers. But still there's something in your chest today. A kind of stirring. A loosening of the knot that winter always ties deep in your ribs. The children are still asleep, their faces pink from the heat of the fire, their breathing deep and regular. You step over them softly and stoke the coals. You're running low on firewood again, but it doesn't matter as much now. The cold isn't biting anymore. It clings, sure, but without malice. Your spouse joins you, stretching, yawning, smiling without being asked to. You can't remember the last time that happened. The two of you share the last piece of yesterday's bread in silence, alternating bites, chewing slowly. You save the crumbs for the chickens. Later, you walk together to the edge of the woods. The trees are bare, but the ground beneath them is damp instead of frozen. Patches of green are showing tiny, defiant things. You crouch to examine them. Nettles, dock, even a wild onion or two. The first forage of the season. You gather what you can, careful to leave enough to regrow. This is the first gift of spring, and you know better than to take greedily. You return home and grind the foraged greens with salt and lard into a paste. It's bitter but vibrant. The children don't love it, but they eat it without fuss. Your oldest even asks for more. You give it to them with a wink. You're growing, you say, and they beam. The villagers are stirring too. You pass neighbors you haven't spoken to in weeks. Real conversations begin to return short, but more than grunts and nods. You hear someone mention that the manor will soon send out oxen to help plow the shared fields. Another whispers about a peddler passing through in a fortnight, bringing cloth and salt. And maybe, if the rumors are true, sugar. Sugar. It's hard not to laugh. It's such a luxury, so distant from your everyday life that even hearing the word feels like a fantasy. But it sticks in your mind, a dream on the edge of reality. That afternoon, the reeve calls a village gathering. You all assemble near the chapel, huddled still, but no longer from cold. The reeve announces that the thaw has opened the roads. The steward has agreed to let villagers plant early in exchange for a doubled tithe this year. There's a hush. A doubled tithe means trouble. Fewer meals in summer. Leaner stores come autumn. But planting early might mean more food to begin with. More vegetables, more oats, maybe even a surplus. No one argues. What would be the point? You nod along with the others. This is how it always goes. The land giveth. The Lord taketh. But there's something else. The reeve says the steward is allowing each family a section of the common meadow to keep just for themselves. Whatever grows, there is yours. Not taxed, not counted. It's unheard of. You feel the ripple pass through the crowd. Disbelief, hope, suspicion. But the reeve is not a man who jokes. The land is yours, he says, if you can prepare it. You go home with your head spinning. Your spouse already knows something's changed by the look in your eyes. You explain slowly, letting the words settle. They ask the same thing you were thinking. What's the catch? And yet there doesn't seem to be one. A patch of land. Yours. No strings. A place to grow herbs or onions or flax if you dare. A place to bury your hands in the earth and know the reward is yours to keep. You go to the meadow that evening just to see it. It's wet, soft, and still ringed with frost at the edges. But it's there, untouched, waiting. You kneel and press your hand to the dirt. It's cold, yes, but not dead. It smells of rot and moss and ancient things waking up. You think of your children's faces, of that cough that's finally gone, of the bread, of the bird in the tree, of the nettles and the green paste that still sits in a clay jar by the hearth. You think this year might be different. You don't believe in miracles, not really, not like the priest does. But you believe in soil, in work, in sun on your face and seeds between your fingers. And right now that feels holy enough. That night your dreams are different, not desperate or hungry. You dream of green things, of vines climbing up the side of your hut, of laughter in warm air, of your child chasing a butterfly through tall grass. You wake smiling, and for the first time in a long, long winter, you don't dread the day ahead. You welcome it. Spring is not a straight road. It comes in fits and starts. An afternoon of sun followed by a night of frost, a few days of drying mud before the rain returns and turns it all into a swamp. But even with its stumbles, spring is arriving. You can feel it in your joints, in the air that no longer bites, in the birds that chatter like gossiping neighbors bolder each morning. Today, your job is to break the earth. Your patch of meadow, your patch is waiting. It's not large. Maybe the length of a cow and a half wide enough to lie down and stretch your arms, but no more. Still, it's yours. You wake early, belly warmed by nettle broth and the last of the lard, and head out with your digging stick slung over one shoulder. The air is wet. It smells of thawed roots, of wet bark, of old decay becoming something new. The sky is low and soft, the kind of sky that lets you work without burning. You bend to the task, and the work begins. The soil resists at first. It clumps in cold fists, sticky with clay and tangled with roots. You stab and turn over and over, loosening one furrow at a time. It's back-breaking work. Your hands blister. Your thighs ache. Your breath comes in clouds, but the ground yields. And when it does, it releases a smell so familiar, it makes you pause, earthy, dark, and rich. This is the scent of planting, of hope buried underfoot and brought up again by force. You close your eyes and breathe it in. By midday, you've carved 4 rows into the field straight enough to satisfy you. Your spouse arrives with the children, each carrying a handful of seed. Some is leftover from last harvest, bartered and saved in clay jars. Some you received in exchange for firewood. Beans, onions, cabbage, leeks. Together you begin. You teach your youngest how to place seeds deep enough to protect them from birds, but not so deep they'll choke. Your oldest copies your rhythm. You press each one into the soil like it's a prayer cover. It gently pat the earth, over and over. 100 small acts of faith. You think of all the things that can go wrong: flood, frost, rot, worms, crows, rabbits, careless boots. But you don't say it. You plant anyway. This is what life in the village has taught you. There are no guarantees, only chances. And taking the chance is part of survival. After the last row is finished, you stand and stretch your back tight with pain, your knees stained with dirt. The children chase each other through the grass, laughing. You sit beside your spouse, share a drink of water, and let the silence fill you. The sun breaks through the clouds. Not strong, but enough to feel on your cheek. Back at the hut, you find that the animals have grown restless. The chickens are laying again, though the eggs are still small. You gather 2 and show them to your children like treasure. The goats bleat more often now, their milk flowing with less coaxing. The sick one from the storm has even started climbing onto the roof again, a sure sign of recovery. That evening, you mix a little of the flour with goat's milk and a pinch of the foraged greens. You make cakes on the hot stone by the hearth, flipping them until browned. The children eat them in 2 bites, asking for more. You smile and say, maybe tomorrow. After the meal, you sit outside the hut with your spouse, watching the stars blink to life. It's not warm, but you don't need a fire. Not yet. The wind is gentle. The smoke from other huts rises in twisting ribbons, a signal of life returning all across the village. You talk softly about your patch of land, about what you might do if the cabbages grow large, if the beans don't rot. You joke about making a stew so rich the reeve might come knocking. And then quietly, you both speak of something you haven't dared to mention all winter next year. Maybe if the harvest is good, you'll have enough to trade for shoes, or a blanket, or more salt. Maybe if things go well, you could put aside a little coin, hide it in the wall. Just a few coppers for emergencies. You say these things with the cautious hope of people who've lived too long under the threat of disappointment. But you say them. That alone is something. The stars above are sharp and clear. A thin crescent moon hangs just over the tree line. You remember something the priest said months ago before the worst of winter, about how planting is a kind of prayer. That faith isn't only something said in Latin behind chapel doors. It's something done with dirty hands, with seeds and soil and stubbornness. You didn't believe him at the time. But tonight, sitting under the stars with dirt still under your nails and the soft ache of work in your bones, you begin to understand. Tomorrow, there will be more digging. There will be rain, or sun, or both. There will be aches and blisters. Hungry days still, but also there will be green shoots pushing up from the soil, and with them maybe, just maybe, a different kind of life. Rain. Not the biting sleet of late winter, nor the ice rain that turns fields into glass, but true rain. Gentle at first, then steady, washing over the village like a blessing. It drums on the thatch above your head, threads down the walls, in tiny streams, pools in shallow ruts outside the hut. You wake to the sound of it, and for once you smile. You've been waiting for this. Inside, everything smells damp again. But it's a different kind of damp now, not the musty, stale cold of December. It's fresh, earthy, alive. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms, and listen to the rhythm of the rain. It's as if the whole world is breathing again. Your patch of land will drink deeply today. You imagine the seeds you pressed into the soil just days ago, swelling, splitting, waking. You picture tiny roots finding their way down into the rich, dark earth, pulling strength from below. It's a vision that gives your tired body a reason to move. The children sleep longer on rainy days. The light is softer, the air heavier. You and your spouse step outside, quietly, cloaks pulled tight against the drizzle, to check on the animals. The goat huffs when she sees you stamping once. The chickens are huddled together under a lean-to, looking like clumps of mud with eyes. You feed them scraps, old barley cabbage stems, a crushed snail or two from the edge of the path. They eat eagerly. You collect 3 eggs from their nest boxes. 3. A small miracle. Your spouse holds them like glass. You laugh softly under your breath. Back inside, you crack one of the eggs into a clay bowl. Mix it with the last of the nettle paste, a pinch of salt. You cook it slowly over the coals, sharing bits among the children. It's a breakfast worthy of a feast day. Your eldest stares into the bowl with awe. It tastes like spring, they whisper. You nod. It does. After breakfast, you sit by the door and mend a tunic, one you've worn since Michaelmas last year. The thread is coarse, pulled from an old sack, but it holds. You patch a hole at the shoulder and reattach a leather tie. It won't win you praise, but it will survive another season. Outside, the rain continues. The village is quieter in the wet. No shouting. No clanging tools. Just the steady hush of rain on soil and stone. Occasionally, a voice drifts through the mist, someone calling to a child, or laughing faintly at a slip in the mud. These sounds weave themselves into your day, comforting in their normality. Around midday, the priest walks through the village with his hood up, pausing at each hut. He doesn't knock or demand, just places a small wooden cross by each door. You know what it means, a reminder. Palm Sunday is near. Holy Week approaches. The priest will expect the chapel swept, candles made, and prayers offered. You sigh. Not out of reluctance, but fatigue. Religion weaves through your days like thread through cloth. You don't think about it much. You just wear it. But there's something about springtime prayers that feel different, less fearful, more thankful. Less about survival, more about growth. After the priest passes, you gather with the others near the meadow. The rain has softened the ground too much to work, but you need to see it, to check your plot, to make sure the wind hasn't torn anything up, that the birds haven't plucked away your future. You walk the rows slowly, boots squelching. The soil is thick and sticky but intact. You crouch low and see it barely a green tip poking through the brown. A single sprout. Then another. Your breath catches. The others see it too. A murmur ripples through the group. Not joy exactly, no one's bold enough for joy, but something like relief, like faith being answered quietly. One woman laughs and starts crying at the same time. You understand. You head back to the hut with mud caked to your knees and your hands damp with rain. But your heart is lighter. The fire inside is low, but the room feels warmer anyway. You rub your hands together and sit near it, watching your children play with carved sticks and river stones. That evening, the rain slows to a mist. You step outside again, wrap your cloak tight, and look up at the sky. The clouds are parting. Behind them, a streak of yellow breaks across the horizon. The sun finally returning. You think back to winter, how long it was, how sharp, how quiet. And now the world is noisy again, squishy and wet, and uncertain but noisy, alive. You step to your patch of ground and crouch low. You run your fingers over the surface, damp and soft. You whisper to the shoots, grow, please grow. And somehow it feels like they hear you. You return to the hut and tell the children. They cheer softly, as if afraid the plants might hear too much and change their minds. That night, you cook a stew thin but hot. It's made from everything you have left: dried onion pea flour, a shred of salt pork, and a single egg whisked in for body. It fills the room with a scent you want to hold on to forever. As you eat, you talk. Not about fear or hunger, but about what might come. About the beans, the onions, the hopes curling beneath the soil. Your spouse suggests planting herbs if the season is kind. Your eldest dreams aloud about selling extra cabbages at the autumn fair. The baby smacks the table with a wooden spoon and gurgles in agreement. You laugh. You all do. The fire burns long into the night. You keep feeding it even when it doesn't need it, just to see the light, just to feel the heat on your skin. Outside, the wind carries the smell of wet leaves and turned earth. Inside, your family sleeps with full bellies. You lie awake, staring at the thatch above you, hand resting on your chest, and for once, you don't feel the weight of tomorrow. You feel its invitation. The days are longer now. Not by much, but enough that you feel it in your body. You wake before the sun crests the trees, and instead of gray gloom, you find a sky beginning to glow with soft peach and blue. The dawn chorus returns, each bird staking its territory in frantic, joyful bursts. It's a noisy, messy declaration the world is changing. Finally, you rise quietly, stepping over your children, who now sleep with fewer layers. You don't need the fire in the mornings as much. The cold no longer sits in your bones like it did through winter. Your joints still ache, but they stretch easier. The air isn't gentle yet, but it doesn't feel hostile anymore. You walk to your field. Your field. The soil has dried just enough that your boots no longer disappear into it. Your steps are lighter. The rows you turned are now marked with green. Not weeds, but sprouts. Real, determined, hungry green. Beans and onions pushing upward. Cabbages just barely breaking through. You crouch low and brush your hand over them gently, reverently, as if touching a newborn. It's still early. You know better than to count food before it grows. But this morning, you allow yourself a moment. A breath of what might be soon. Back at the hut, the animals are growing restless. The goats bleat for the open fields. You tie a line to one and let her out to graze near the edge of the village. She moves stiffly at first, unused to freedom, after months indoors, then bounds forward with a strange kind of joy. You chuckle as you watch her. She's acting the way you feel. Inside, your spouse is scraping the last of the barley meal into a bowl. You won't need to ration much longer. Soon there will be greens to boil eggs, to collect even wild herbs to dry and save. You chew the thick porridge with gratitude, even though it tastes of nothing but grit and effort. Because it's yours. Every spoonful won is better than 10 handed down by a steward. The children go to chapel later that morning. They're studying the Psalms this week, preparing for the coming feast days. You don't often go, your knees don't like the chapel floor, but you feel the change when they return. They hum softly, tuneless but sincere. One of them recites, "They that sow in tears shall reap in joy." You nod. That sounds about right. In the afternoon, you help mend your neighbor's fence. It fell under snow and was never repaired. Their sheep are expecting lambs soon, and they're afraid the little ones will wander. You bring your tools, your strength, and your silence. They offer you a handful of dried apples in return. You tuck them into your pouch like coins. Every trade matters now. You talk a bit while you work. Not about taxes or death or hunger, but about the weather, the crops, about what the village might do this year if there's surplus. You hear rumors, always rumors, that the Lord may raise the levy again now that the roads are dry, that the steward wants the village to build a second storage barn near the stream. You don't say much, just listen. Let it wash over you like rain. Because there's nothing you can do about lords and stewards. But there is something you can do about beans and goats and weeds in your patch of ground. You return home tired but not defeated. Your hands ache from lifting wood. Your arms are sore from hammering. But it's a clean soreness earned. Dinner is a bit of boiled nettle and watercress sprinkled with ash salt and stirred into yesterday's broth. It tastes green. Not good, but green. And that's enough. After the meal, you sit with your family outside. The sun hasn't quite set yet. Its golden light hits the tops of the trees, painting everything in soft amber. You close your eyes and tilt your face toward it. The warmth seeps into your cheeks, your forehead, the tops of your hands. You don't realize you're smiling until your spouse touches your arm and grins back at you. The baby toddles toward the goat arms out and tumbles face first into the grass. You all laugh as they blink in surprise, then giggle and roll over. Their first fall in grass instead of mud. A strange milestone, but a welcome one. You tell stories as the stars appear. Old ones passed down from your mother and her mother. Tales of river spirits and tree giants. Of a woman who turned into a field of wheat so her family wouldn't go hungry. The children listen wide-eyed, the younger ones snuggled into your side. And when it's time for sleep, there's no fear. No whispered prayers to simply make it through the night. Just a quiet contentment. You bank the fire, lay out the straw, and crawl beneath the blanket. And you dream not of food or fire or warmth, but of a summer field, of long green rows, of wind and tall grass, of life, not survival. And for the first time since before the frost, you sleep through the night without waking. The village smells different now. Where once the air held the sharp scent of smoke and wet wool, it now carries the perfume of damp grass, blooming weeds turned earth, and manure an odd but welcome cocktail that speaks of movement, of growth, of fields waking up. Even the animals seem to know something has shifted. The chickens are louder, the goats more restless. The whole world is starting to stretch its limbs after a long, shivering slumber. You rise earlier these days. There's work to do now that can't be delayed, not if you want your patch to yield anything worth eating come summer. The sprouts in your garden are no longer mere suggestions. They're real plants now. You can see where the beans will climb, where the onions will bulb. You even spotted 2 bright green cabbage leaves uncurling yesterday, fragile but fierce. You begin your morning by checking them again, crouching low, hands on your knees, eyes scanning for damage. Birds are always a threat now. So are children, for that matter, little feet trampling what they don't understand. You've strung twine and cloth between sticks to scare the birds, a tactic borrowed from the older folk. It's crude, but it helps. You shoo away a jackdaw picking near the fence and mutter under your breath, "Not today." Back inside the hut, your spouse is already grinding pea flour for bread. The flour comes from a trade you made last week, 4 eggs for 2 cups of meal and a strip of dried fish. You're saving the fish. The flour, though, becomes small flatbreads browned on the hearthstone and eaten warm. You break one in half and hand it to your youngest, who grins and promptly drops crumbs across the floor. You don't scold them. After breakfast, it's time to fetch water. The stream is flowing fast now, full from spring rains and snow melt in the hills. You carry your clay jugs on a yoke across your shoulders, careful with each step on the slick path. At the bank, you kneel and scoop, carefully watching the mud swirl before settling again. On the walk home, you pass others doing the same. One woman, Raina, the weaver's wife, tells you her youngest has learned to walk. She says it like a confession, as if daring the world to punish her for having something to be happy about. You smile and offer congratulations. She touches your arm and smiles back, the kind of small connection that feels monumental after months of quiet desperation. Later that day, the reeve makes his rounds again. He's less threatening now, or maybe you've just gotten used to his presence. He walks from hut to hut with a ledger and a grunt, checking on who has planted and who hasn't. Those who haven't will be docked in their tithe. Laziness, he says, is as bad as thievery. You nod when he passes point to your patch, your planted rows, the twine strung between sticks. He nods back. "Looks good," he mutters. "It's not praise exactly, but it's the closest thing you'll get." The rest of the day is spent in the garden. You weed carefully, one hand always brushing aside the good growth to protect it from the bad. The children help too, sometimes well, sometimes not. But it's a lesson. They need to learn what's food and what's trouble, what's tender and what's thorny, what feeds and what takes. You pull up a patch of creeping weed and find a worm. The children gather around, fascinated. One pokes it with a stick, another dares to touch it. You explain in your simplest voice how the worm helps the soil, how it stirs and turns and nourishes. Your eldest listens intently, like the fire for the hearth, they say, exactly like that. When the sun starts to fall, your body feels heavy but whole. Your back aches. Your hands are stained green, but your heart is full of motion. You wash your face with cool water, dry it on your sleeve, and sit outside with your spouse. The sky turns golden. The smoke from neighboring huts rises slow and steady. Laughter drifts from somewhere near the chapel. It sounds like the carpenter's boys finally out of their hovel and back in the world. Your spouse brings out a cloth bundle and unwraps the dried fish. For tonight, they say. You raise your eyebrows. A feast. They nod. It's May soon. You don't argue. The fire is stoked high, then the fish grilled slowly on a stick over open flame. You add a pinch of salt, a dash of crushed greens. The children watch it turn brown and crackle their eyes wide with anticipation. When it's done, you divide it evenly, even the crisp skin. The first bite makes you close your eyes. Smoky, salty, fatty. You chew slowly, mindfully, not wanting the moment to pass too quickly. Afterward, the children chase fireflies near the path. The baby claps and squeals. The older ones pretend to be dragons. You and your spouse sit together on the stump near the door, your shoulders touching. I think we'll be all right, you say softly. They don't answer right away. Then they nod. I think so too. Night comes gently. No frost, no fear. You lie down beside your children, your belly not full but not empty. Outside, the new moon hangs low in the sky. And inside, for the first time in what feels like forever, everything is still and peaceful and alive. The days roll forward now with a quiet rhythm. Not the desperate clatter of winter survival, but the steady, muscle-deep routine of planting season. Wake, stoke the fire, feed the animals, tend the patch, work the shared fields, repeat. It's hard labor, yes, but it feels like something different now. Like progress. Like building instead of barely holding on. Your garden is transforming. Every morning you check it with the same cautious hope. More sprouts, taller stalks, tiny leaves spreading wider with each day. The cabbages are thriving. The beans have started to climb the twine. Even the onions, your most modest crop, have begun to thicken at the base. You touch the shoots like you'd touch a child's forehead, proud but still worried. In the village commons, you hear the same whispers you've heard every spring. Predictions about the harvest. Arguments over which fields will yield more. Rumors of pests in the far end of the barley plots. But this year something's different. There's laughter behind the voices. Less suspicion, more shared smiles. People are no longer muttering to themselves with eyes cast down, they're speaking to each other. Planning. Dreaming. You join them. Your own fieldwork has expanded beyond your little patch. The steward has tasked the village with restoring the larger plots that belong to the manor rows of barley wheat and rye that stretch out across the gentle rise behind the chapel. You volunteer again. You always do now. You swing your hoe beside neighbors, shoulder a sack of seed, fall into the rhythm of communal labor. It's strange. You never thought you'd enjoy this part. The sweat, the mud, the repetition. But under the spring sun, with birds overhead, and your children's laughter carried on the wind, you feel a kind of joy that's difficult to name. It's not happiness exactly, just a deep exhale, a release. One afternoon, while hoeing the barley rows, you find a nest hidden among the underbrush at the field's edge. 4 speckled eggs, tiny, perfect. You crouch and call your youngest over. They gasp when they see it. You hold a finger to your lips. Together you back away. That nest becomes a kind of symbol in your mind, a secret pocket of the world where life is waiting to burst open. Back home, the changes are small but constant. The goat is giving more milk now, enough that you begin to churn some into soft cheese using cloth and clay bowls, just as your mother taught you long ago. The chickens are laying daily. You've even begun to trade eggs again, 4 for a length of twine, 2 for a pinch of dried mint. The baby is walking now, wobbling and falling and standing again with stubborn triumph. Your older children argue less. They still bicker, of course, but now it's over seeds, not scraps. That's something. Your spouse repairs the roof in the evenings, patching the sag with thatch gathered weeks ago. You tie bundles, pass them up, help wedge them into place. You both speak less during these moments, but the silence is full, comfortable. Working hands, working hearts. On Sundays you attend chapel again. Not just the children, but the whole family. You sit on the worn bench in the back, beneath the cracked stone window, and listen as the priest speaks of rebirth, of renewal, of the tomb becoming empty. You watch dust motes spin in the sunlight. You think of the sprouting beans, of warm goat's milk, of that little nest in the field. You think, maybe the tomb really is empty. The next day, your eldest brings back news the fair is coming. A traveling fair, they say, just after midsummer. Just a small one. A few traders, maybe a puppet show cloth from the south. Your children's eyes shine. Your spouse raises an eyebrow. They say that every year. But this time you allow yourself to believe it might be true. You tell your spouse you'll dry onions if they grow well, maybe sell them at the fair. You laugh at the idea, not because it's ridiculous, but because it isn't. That evening, you and the children begin making little pouches from scraps of cloth, just in case, for money, or buttons, or trinkets to trade. It's not what you own that matters, it's that you have something to offer. Later that week, the reeve comes again, but this time he brings news you never expected. The Lord's steward has declared that each family with a working garden may keep the produce from it untaxed. The manor is more interested in grain this year, not vegetables. The garden is yours, he says, so long as the barley is tended. You feel your breath catch. Your garden, truly yours. You return to it that afternoon with new eyes. Every leaf matters more. Every inch of soil feels richer. You crouch, dig gently with your fingers, and check the roots. You water carefully. You sit for a long time just watching. Your spouse joins you after supper, hands dusted with flour. They sit beside you in the dirt. You say nothing. They say nothing. But when the wind shifts and carries the scent of growth of young garlic, fresh shoots wet earth, you both smile. And you don't have to say anything at all. You've stopped counting the days. Time now moves by the rhythm of the sun and the growth in your garden. Not the slow grinding passage of winter days measured in hunger and silence, but a rolling steady tide of light and work and small daily victories. You wake with the light and sleep when the fire burns down. You eat when the children are hungry and rest when the sky turns gold. Your garden is thick with green. The beans have wrapped themselves tightly around the strings, climbing eagerly toward the sky. The cabbage leaves are wide and firm, curling in like fists ready to unfurl. The onions are fattening at the base, their green stalks tall and proud. You pull a few just to see. They're real. Not hope, not potential, but food. Weight. Substance. You hold them in your hands like treasure. This week you dig up the first of the early carrots. They're small, crooked, and a bit pale, but they snap clean and smell sharp and sweet. You boil them with herbs and peas, add a bit of goat milk, and pass bowls around the fire. The children slurp them down with wide eyes. Even the baby demands more, banging their spoon with impatient joy. Your spouse grins across the firelight. You don't have to speak to know what they're thinking. This is why. You've bartered for a small linen sack from the weaver's wife, and inside, you keep your first handful of dried herbs, nettle, mint, thyme laid out carefully, turned daily. They're for the future, for sickness or flavor or trade. You guard them more fiercely than coins. You're also drying some onions on a wooden rack outside the hut. Your eldest helps string them. You've promised they can carry the bundle to the midsummer fair if it comes. They talk about it constantly now, about the puppet show, about painted buttons, about the strange smells and music that might drift into your village if travelers come. You don't correct them. Let the dream stand. One evening, just before dusk, you walk to the edge of the barley field. The green sea sways in the breeze, not yet ready for harvest, but full of promise. You run your hand along the stalks, feel the tickle of their brushing tips against your fingers. The whole field hums with insects and wind and the subtle, low thrum of the living world. It's like standing in the breath of something ancient. You crouch and pluck a single stalk. Examine the forming grain. Still soft. Not long now. Behind you, the village glows with the orange of dozens of hearths. Smoke curls upward from every roof. Children's laughter skips across the fields. The world is far from perfect, but it's moving. You think about the winter, how cold the floor was beneath your feet, how hollow your belly felt, how you counted the firewood by nights instead of logs. You remember the baby's fever, the goat under the collapsed roof, the snow that seemed never to end, and you remember the prayers. Not the ones whispered in chapel, but the ones whispered to fire, to soil, to sprouts, to children's breathing mouths. They were answered, not with miracles, but with growth, with survival, with spring. Your garden has become something more than food. It's your memory, your altar, your quiet rebellion against a world that so often forgets the poor. You planted your hope in the earth, and it took root. Tonight, after the children have gone to sleep, you sit by the fire and reach for your spouse's hand. The calluses on your palms match theirs. You both carry the same seasons etched in your skin. You talk softly about what next year might bring. You wonder if the patch might be expanded, if you could plant leeks or barley of your own. You laugh at the idea of keeping bees. But the laughter is real. Outside, the moon rises slowly above the trees, fat and pale and watching. You step out one last time to check the garden, just to see, just because. And there, beneath the cabbage leaves, you find a rabbit nibbling at a stalk. You hiss, clap your hands. It darts away into the brush, vanishing like a shadow. You crouch to inspect the damage. Nothing serious, just a few nibbled stems. Still, you'll need a better fence, because everything good draws hunger. You walk back to the hut, light still flickering in the doorway. Your family safe inside, and you think, we made it. We made it through the winter. We made it through the starving months. We built something, with porridge and prayer, with nothing but our hands. And now, for the first time in a long time, the seasons belong to us again. And now, if you've made it this far, let your mind drift like a warm breeze across that little medieval field. Soft grass brushing your ankles, the sky opening wide above your head, sunlight glittering on the stream as you pass by with your clay jug full and unbroken. There's no rush anymore, no snow on your shoulders, no coughing in the dark, just the lazy buzz of bees among cabbages, the gentle hush of leaves overhead, the warmth of goat's milk in your hands, and the quiet pride of your garden, still green and standing. Maybe you find yourself lying in the grass, now your head resting on a bundled cloak, your eyes blinking slowly at a sky that promises tomorrow won't be cruel. You smell mint and damp earth and the ashes of last night's fire. You hear your child's laughter in the distance and the creak of your spouse's boots as they walk toward you from the barley rows. Everything is slow here, soft, safe. You've survived the brutal winter, the hunger, the cold nights where even the stars turned their faces away. You bent low to the soil, you whispered your prayers, and the ground heard you. It gave back what it could. And now, at last, you rest. The garden grows without you for now. So go ahead, close your eyes, breathe deep, and let the season carry you gently into sleep.